Welcome to the EZCODE Projects Series toaster video number 2. In this video, we'll add some logic to our toaster levers. And if you have not done so already, please complete the previous EZCODE Projects toaster series videos. Those of you that have done so may continue. Just a wonderful reminder that all you have to do is type as I do. Just pause the video or slow down the speed when needed to catch up. Understanding comes later. Let's begin. So the first thing we'll do is open the maze or the toaster project directory in VS Code. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to select the Finder wherever you keep your folders and files, and I keep mine in projects under EZCODE, and there's our toaster file. Except that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to VS Code. So if you make that mistake, go to VS Code, please, and then we will open up the Explorer tab on the left side. We'll open the folder, same flow as before, toaster, that's the directory we want. And just in case yours isn't showing up, you can always select this left and right, or with VS Code, at least with the Mac, you can hit Command B to open that keyboard shortcuts. Here, my files are already open. I'm just going to close out a few for now because I only want to focus on the view HTML. Well, if you remember from last time, we were adding a bunch of shape to our document. So we added the heaters and some body, and then we added these two elements, if you remember that, these two inputs. Well, these two inputs don't do anything besides interact with the user, but how do we collect that data? So what we're going to do now is we're going to add the code that's required, and to do that we have to tell the input, hey input, we would like you to be responsive to this code and fire. So there's a property here, so the input will fire the code when it gets interaction with the user, and for the input it's called onInput. We don't make this part up, this is brought to you by the browser. And onInput, and then we put in the method. Now we haven't made, or the function, we haven't made the function yet, but what we do have is we have the EZCODE module. So if we go over here, and just to show you, here's the code.js. This is what we built in the setup series right here. And anything enclosed in this and here, it's going to run this code inside of here, and it's going to assign it to this whatever name we put up here. In this case it was EZCODE. Just want you to show you, there it is. And that's going to be loaded via the HTML down here. So the browser is going to consume it, and it's going to make that word available throughout our application and the browser. In fact, if I went to the browser and I typed in EZCODE, I would get this, whatever was returned, which is just a blank object at this time. So let's go back here to this, and now we know that we have the word EZCODE here. So we can put in here, it has to be the same, so it's going to be capital because we made ours capital, and then we're going to put dot, and that's what gives the context, the dot notation for anything in programming, where it would be, what's the parent level? It's EZCODE. Okay, well then what's part of the EZCODE thing? Well, we say dot, and then we say whatever it is. In this case, it's going to be a function, and we're going to call that function toggle. And all functions, of course, when we call them, we're going to have parentheses in them. And in this case, we're going to pass a value. And in this case, we'll be very specific with what we say, but it's this value, as in the value of the input. So this value, which is known here in the HTML, is going to get passed into our method, and our method's going to fire. So this was for the lever. Let's save our work and open the code.js file in the new tab. So remember, we have unsaved work here. Command S or Control S, whatever works for you on your platform. And then we go to the code.js file. So in here, we're going to have to do two things. The first thing is we're going to need to add a function just like this one. So we're not going to mess with the load function right now. We're going to actually open up right here, and we're just going to say, hey, it's a function. And what did we name it? We named it toggle, and it had something passed in. We'll call whatever gets passed in as the first argument. We're just going to call it value here, and then we open up curly braces. And here we're just going to see what we did. So we're going to do a console log, and we'll say here is the toggle value, and then comma value. So you can see what we've done here is we just have a string with a comma and then the value for our console log. Toggle, you can notice here that it is grayed out or a little bit dim. And that's because nobody's using it in the file. To use it in the file, we're going to actually return it as part of our object here. And we're going to use shorthand, which means really there's always a key and there's always a value when there's parentheses like this, like an object, where it's just an object. It's not a function, even though functions have curly braces too. Oh, thank you for that. So here, the key and value. In this case, it's going to be toggle, toggle. So on the right side, this is the one that's in the file, and we're assigning it to a key. And that key we just happen to be calling toggle. So in JavaScript, what makes it a little bit easy sometimes is when you do that, you can just name it toggle, and it knows the value and the key are going to be the same. So just in case we come across objects again later on, that it's just shorthand. So don't get confused by that. It's just always key value pairs. This is what we call them, and they're always separated by a colon. Lots of different languages have these. They usually start with some kind of braces like this. And then you can always say, you know, stuff, comma, other stuff, you know, and whatever values you want. Now, we don't want to do that right now. We're just passing out one object. So in the HTML, of course, if you look at the top of this code, it's EZCODE. So that's why we can say EZCODE.toggle, because it's going to be available from the return statement, which is part of the EZCODE. We're going to make other files like this in here, and we always do that in all of our projects again and again and again. So I just want to sink it into your mind that this is how it all works. Now, we have this and we can save. We have our toggle here. We'll go ahead and save the file. Now we're going to open up the browser like we normally do. Scroll over here, open up the browser, and we're going to file, open the browser. Okay, we got that open. This is the wrong file here. EZCODE, toaster, source. And here we go. We got the view HTML. That's the file we always load, which grabs the rest of this stuff and places it right here. Hey, there's our happy toaster. Hello, happy toaster. Let's inspect this thing just to get this thing open here. And we're going to open the console because this is where any of our logs would go. And let's see. Let's click the toast lever. Okay, so we'll go down here and we're going to click it and click it and click it and click it. And you notice what's happening? It's giving us the values that we said earlier in the other video where we said for this lever it's going to have a value of minimum of 0, max of 1. It's going to step in increments of 1, and it's just going to move back and forth. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, or 0, 1, 0, 1. This is exactly what we want. So we know that we have a value coming in, and that's great. So let's see. So it reflects our two values. So let's make one quick change in our file real quick. So we're just going to go, because as we're looking here, we can see this. We know this is a string, but what's this? This is a number, right? So let's go back over here and let's do a quick little JavaScript thing where we can ask it a question. Say, what's this a type of? Is this a string? Is this a number? Is this an object? Is this a Boolean? What is it? And we're going to go ahead and save our work. We're going to slide back over there. We're going to refresh our browser, and then we're going to click it again. And we can see what's it saying. Now it's only doing one line because it's the same exact line over and over again, because every value 0 or 1 that was coming out of that input is a string. So that's interesting to know that. So the type of value is the string. So let's type the value. Let's type a couple things in here. So what's a string? A string is, it's either single, or two double. Okay, either way. So we're going to put a 0, and we're going to say, is that equal to 0? And it already tells me, even before I hit enter, no, it is not. Okay, well, what about 1 then? 1 must be equal to 1. No, it is not. Well, then what about 1 is equal to 1? That's true, because that's an identical string with an identical value in the string. However, numbers are different. So normally I can't sit here and say 1 plus 1, because that's going to equal 11, or really it's just going to concatenate the two strings together. It has nothing to do with that it happened to turn out to be 11. It'll put any two strings together if we add them together. But we want math, where we'd be something like this. We would expect 1 plus 1. So another thing that might throw people up in JavaScript is this equal to false? Like 0. 0 is actually equal to false with our number. So is that equal to false? Oops, sorry, it won't be equal to false, but it will be false. So if I took a Boolean operator and put it in front of it, oops, sorry, double, it shows that it's a falsy number. So just like this would be an empty string. If we did that one, that would also be false. So this gets a little messy sometimes, but what I want you to understand here is that we're dealing with strings when we're dealing with the input, and we might not want to use strings later on. So all HTML input element values are always strings. So we just have to remember when we're creating our logic, and with that knowledge in our brains, let's return to the code.js file and fill in our toggle function. So I'm going to slide back over here. So let's start by thinking about our logic inside of the function. Okay, so what do we have here? We can kind of type this out here. I'm going to do a commented out code here, and we're going to say lever is depressed or pressed, and the toggle function, you don't have to type this out, just keep thinking about it. The toggle function is invoked. Okay. So 2, we set the timer based on the value of the intensity setting. Oh. Okay, and then what's the next thing we got to do? So if we're going to push the lever down, we're going to set it based on the settings on the bottom lever, and then we're going to turn on the heaters, and then the timer runs out. That's the next step. And then what would be? Well, we got to turn the heaters off. And then let's see, what would we have to do next? We'd have to reset the lever. And let's not forget to cancel any timers. Okay, so this is pseudo coding, and what we're doing here is we're trying to go through the flow of what's going on here. We know what we need to do, but we might not know exactly how to do that with programming. So we can take it step by step. So we have a lever. So number 1, that's good. We can depress it, and the toggle function is invoked. We've done that one already. We've already proven that that works. So the second one would be set a timer based on the value of the intensity, and so on. So let's see if we can think of something else that comes out here. We need to get the elements of the heaters in both inputs. Okay, so let me just type this out. We need to get the elements of the heaters in both inputs. Okay, that tells us something. So if you remember on the inputs, we had 2 IDs. So we have a way of getting the input values via the code, and we're passing in one of the values. And then let's see, we also, elements of both heaters and both inputs. So we're going to have to get the heaters too, which we don't need IDs for those, and I'll show you that in a little bit, but we do need the values of the setting input, such as const equals, what do I got here? Setting input. we know what we need to get. We need to get the actual input values. So we have hooks to get those, at least 2 of them, and we have hooks to get CSS values as well, or at least via CSS classes. So for the heater, we can ask the DOM and say, give me the elements that have class heater, and we can get those. So it looks like we got the hooks that we want. So let's start with the second one, or number 2, as we already have completed the first one, as I mentioned. So let's see if we're going to do this right here. And there are, of course, this is loaded in the browser. So because it's loaded in the browser, we have available to us the document. So I'm just going to go up here, and you do need to type this out now. So let's talk about what we have. We have the lever, so we're going to assign it to something called lever internally in here, but we also have a global that the browser gives us, and it's the document, the actual running browser document. And we have a bunch of methods that are already given to us, and one of them is get element by ID. Very popular, use it all the time. And if you remember, that ID was lever. Okay, so we're actually getting the DOM element and we're assigning it to lever, so we can ask it questions later on. Not only that, but we have the const for the setting already, document get element by ID, and it was setting. Okay, and then the next one is a little bit different, but if you remember, okay, it's the heaters, and to get the heaters, we're going to use another one, get element, and look down here, we got element by ID, get elements, plural, by class names. This is the one that I was talking about. So the difference between getting by IDs and here is this will show up with an element, this will show up with a collection of elements. So in this case, anything that has heater. So if there was 20 billion in there, we'd get 20 billion pieces. Now, we don't need those. We just need the 2 that we created. And right below this is just a function, so I can console log in here. Let's take a look. I always like to look at what I'm grabbing here. So what do we have? We have lever, setting, and heaters. Oops. So make sure that you've typed this out here. We are going to be using this stuff. And we're going to save our work now. So go ahead and save your work, make sure that's gone, and then we're going to just scooch over here and we're going to refresh the browser. And it looks like we have some stuff in there. So we can see our 2 inputs are returned individually, but the heaters are returned as a collection of elements. So this is what I was talking about before. Here's the first argument, and it's the actual DOM node that's here that we can see. If I went here on the element and I said, hey, where is this thing? It's right there. So we actually get a piece of it, and we can ask questions on this thing. We can ask what properties it is, what value does it have, what settings does it have. Same thing with the second one, it's the ID setting. So we have that's our second argument in the console log. The third one, if you remember, by class name, it's right here. So it's just an array, and you can see this is what we're getting here, and here it's just displayed slightly different, but we can ask the same questions. These 2 top ones have the same things here. All these properties are part of the DOM elements. So in this case, those 2 are divs. And okay, so we have what we want. We have a way to get them. And just remember this, it looks like, if you're familiar with what an array is, it looks like an array because it has array brackets, but the object is not an array, so we can't use some of the array methods unless we interact with it differently. So just know that if you're doing a collection and getting a collection from the document, you have to do a few things before you can use a for each or a map on them. And we'll show how to do that. Now that we have our items available to us, let's add more logic. So we're going to return to the code.js file. And let's complete step 2 that we were just talking about. So we're going to go down here into the toggle, and I'm just going to go below here so we can always look at what we are typing. You don't have to have this here typed, but if you did, congratulations. And what we're going to do is we're going to assign a constant here. We're going to call it timer equals, nice and easy, right? Over and over and over again, just making a variable. In this case, it's a constant variable, but timer is what we're going to call it. And then we're going to use a method that's available to us through JavaScript. We're going to put in an arrow function, which is just a faster way than saying, I could just go in here and do this with my curly braces, but instead there's a little bit of syntactic sugar in JavaScript and I can just do this. So, I mean, really, function name just became an arrow, okay? Arrow functions are great, and here we go. So now we're inside of our function, and we're going to say heaters, because that's our constant we have above, and we're going to say for each, and we're going to say heater, because that's what gets passed in. Another arrow function, we're going to say heater, style, opacity, and we're going to say u now equal 0. Oops, and then we're just going to end that one and clean up our stuff here. And one thing we got to add right between the curly brace and the parentheses. Okay, I'm going to put a comma right there and do a space. I'm going to do 2 more parentheses, and inside of those, I'm going to put setting times 1000. Okay, so just quick what we went over here. We have these parentheses aren't needed. They're just there to make it look a little more neat. We just need the setting times 1000. This is the time that we're going to pass in. So we're passing in whatever the setting was, which if you remember the values were 1 through 5, I believe they were. So we're going to multiply that by 1000 to get 1000 milliseconds. And this, you know what? I just mistyped someone too. I can just see it right here. See this grayed out part? It's a little more grayed out. So let's just fix that. That should be heater, and this should be heater. So just make sure you've made these corrections here. Set timeout heaters for each heater. We could have named this butter, and then we'd have to name this butter. Butter.style if we wanted to. But we're calling it something meaningful. So heater, and then it passes it in and says heater.style. The style and opacity have to be correct. But as long as these two match, we would have been okay. But now they do. Heater and heater equals 0, setting 1000. So make sure you get that right, and then we're just going to scroll down here a little bit, and we're going to say heaters, again, for each heater. And we're going to say heater. Let's make sure I spelled it right this time. Style, opacity is equal to 1. Now, we don't say what opacity is. That's just given. It's already a browser property, and it has to be 0 or 1. So all we're doing is leveraging what's in the browser. So what happens is the function runs. It runs this. It runs both. But the set timeout doesn't run until this time runs out. So this is going to get loaded, but this is going to run. So the heaters are going to turn on, and then in whatever seconds this was set, they're going to turn off. That's what we're hoping for. So let's save our work and refresh the browser. Make sure, again, that you got these spelled correctly. Make sure it matches everything that I have here. And we're going to go ahead and do a save. We're going to go over here, and we're going to hit refresh, which here's my console log from before. And then we're going to toggle the toaster on, and we get an error. So let's take a moment here to note the error. I wanted you to see this. This is uncaught type error. Heaters for each is not a function. And then again it says heaters for each is not a function. Either way, we can see it, and that's because if you recall, it's not an array but an HTML collection. So the browser used a very lightweight way of passing elements around. It doesn't use the heavier array because it doesn't need to. It wants to make it quick and fast. So the HTML collection does not come with all the methods we would get on a normal array class. Now we will first convert the HTML collection to an array. So let's go back to the code file and do that now. And just real quick, we'll probably do this a few times, but you can always grab, let's see, code.js. It even tells you the line 41, and it even shows you, hey, 41, heaters for each. This is not what you think it is. So very helpful to use, and make sure you focus on the errors and where it's telling you the line problem is. So let's go back, and what we're going to do really quick is we're just going to wrap this right here, the two heaters one. So if we came in here and said both of these, we're just going to say array from parentheses, okay, and then parentheses at the end of the S. So make sure you get this on both of the lines, array from. So we're saying, hey, we know the heaters, whatever it is, it's array from knows what to do when it gets it. It knows it's an HTML collection. It's going to return to us a normal array, and then we can just continue with our dot notation. So all right, now that we have that, let's see, we have it listed in here. Do you notice anything about what we did just right? Do two of the lines look almost identical? One of the coding commandments is the dry principle, which is do not repeat yourself, or don't repeat yourself. So here we can see that the only change is between the numbers 0 and 1. So let's create a new function and just pass in the number as an argument. Let's move our constants to the EZCODE scope. Actually, we've already done that part, but we can move them to our EZCODE installation as the elements will not change. So we already have the scopes, as I mentioned. I believe I wrote that to have this inside the function, but we have these up here already. They're already scoped to the EZCODE, so we can use them in all the functions that are inside of here. And then to set this right here, all we have to do is create another function down here. How do we create a function? Function. And we're going to call this set heat, and we're going to pass in a value, and then we're going to do some curly braces, and then all we're going to do is take this line right here, copy it, and put it right here. Now normally on a function you return something, but we're messing around with globals here, so we don't have to. So the set heat gets a value coming in, and it assigns that value. So there's our value over here. And what we can do now is clean up our code up here. So instead of doing this one, we're going to say set heat 1. And up here, you know, one more thing we have to do while we're at it is, let's just fix this up first, because I just noticed we got to add one more thing here. And we're going to say set heat 0. And then while we're at it, let's go ahead, and what we're going to do while we're at it is let's get the values from the setting, which we didn't have properly here, which is fine. The setting input, we actually have to call value to get the value that's on it. And also, let's do one more thing. Let's do lever value equals 1. So you remember the set timeout fires after the set heat 1. So we set the heat on, then later on this is going to fire after this times 1,000, and then it's going to say set heat 0 and lever value 1. Now you remember the user pushes the lever down, and we're going to push the lever back up with a 1 again. So let's save our work here. Make sure that you got these on here. We added the set heat, which we don't have to add to our return statement because we're not using it in the public scope. We're using it internally only in our file here. So we've set the heat. Everything looks good. Let's go ahead and save it. Hopefully all yours is good on there. And we'll just slowly scroll over here. And let's save our, let's see, open the view HTML and remove this value. Oh, we had one more thing to do, I forgot. And that is the way that we're not using this value because of our hooks. So we were doing this before just to see what it would look like. I'm going to remove that console log, and we're going to remove this portion right here. So the toggle doesn't get anything passed in anymore. So the value is gone. We're using global scoped variables at the top. We moved those to the top earlier. I'm just going to save this work now, Remember, the console log's gone and this is gone, the argument that was coming in to toggle. We're going to save it, and we're just going to open our view HTML, and all we're going to do here is we're going to remove this dot value. So get rid of this, we don't need it anymore, and save. Make sure that icon is gone, save our work. And there is one last thing we have to do, and it's to set the default opacity value in the style CSS, because it needs something. It needs to know, what am I at now? And so what we can do is open up the style CSS right here. And we always want an initial state before we change anything in JavaScript. So in the style CSS file under the header class, so we'll go down here and we'll say, where you at, header? There's the header class, and we're just going to say, heater, you're going to begin with opacity of 0. Okay, that's the only change we're going to make here, and now we're going to save. Now, save our work and refresh the browser. So we're just going to scroll back over here. We can try each of our time settings to see if they're progressively longer. So we'll just start with, we currently have a setting time based on input value times 1,000. So let's change that to a global constant. Okay, we'll do that in a little bit. But first, let's play around. So if we push this down, what's going to happen? Let's see. Oh, you know what? Did I refresh this thing all the way? I did. So we can see that we're turning on and then turning off. So I don't think our opacity worked. So if we go to setting in the middle, well, that seemed to work. And let's go all the way to the end. It should be like 5 seconds. That seems to be working. And maybe that refresh wasn't there. I had to refresh it a couple times. I don't know about you, but if I refresh it now and they're not there, then okay. Yep, that's working. So it should be fast. Should be 1 second. And then this should be 2 seconds. 1, 2. I should count a little bit. Maybe 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. I might count a little fast, but 4 and then 5. So that's working. Our time's working. Our toaster is working. We've got some heaters that turn on and eventually turn back off again. I'll leave it on 1 to make it fast. Go ahead and play around all you want for a little bit, and then just pause the video and play around. And then when you're ready, we'll return over here. So let's change, let's see, the 1,000 to the global scope so that we can change it when needed. And what that means is, if you go to the code.js file, and let's say we were doing the 1,000 down here, instead of having it to change in the code, we assign it to a value up here at the top of the file. And so what we can do is right here at the top is we can start, I would do it maybe about right there. And I like to capitalize mine so I can really look at, I know exactly where they are. I'm like, okay, that's a constant, it's probably at the top. I'm going to equal 1,000. I'm just going to make some space in between there and the document elements. And now that we have that, we're just going to copy it, and we're going to scroll back down again here. And instead of 1,000, we're going to put it there. Now this is always nice to do in the code as much as you can, where things might change. In the case of the 0 or 1s, these are not going to change. It's going to be 0 or 1 because that's what the browser expects. But we might pass in a configuration later on. Let's say we were building a really fancy situation where we had different clients, and each one of them said, I want my toasters to have a way longer time when we push that thing down. And we can say, oh yeah, we can do that for you because we have ways of configuring our application. So let's save our work. Okay, we're just going to save our work here. And we're going to do one more thing in the next step. Okay, I don't know about you, but for me, the toaster's coming on way too fast. I like to see it warm up a little bit, take a little time to heat those elements up. And so the next thing that we can do is we can add a little bit of styling or animation to our toasters so that they don't just turn bright red right away. So let's go to our CSS or our style CSS again. and we're going to find the opacity that we put down on the heater right here, and we're just going to open up right below it, and we're going to say transition, make sure I spelled that right there, and we're going to say, well, transition what? It's going to ask. Well, we're going to say the opacity. So when the opacity changes, we want to do a 1 second ease in, out. Now this is already configured for us, the CSS in the browser. They already know what to do with this. There's different ones that we can use, but we want it to ease in and out. Take 1 second to convert whatever the value opacity is. So in this case, it's 0. It'll divide between 0 and 1, however many times that is over 1 second, and then it'll run through to ease in over 1 second, and it'll ease back out over 1 second. So let's check it out. Let's save our work here. Boom. And we're going to move right back over here. And we got to refresh. Okay, there we go. We're starting good. It looks like it's good anyways here. And what we can do is, let's try it. So let's just do a number 1 here. All right, look at that. Do you see the animation happening? And our lever, I'm not clicking that lever back up again. So boom, goes down, pops the toast out. Let's try it for 3 seconds. Oh, boom. 3 seconds, boom, toaster's done. Wow, let's check it here. And you know, if you get some time, you want to do it on your own time, just change some of those configurations. Go ahead and change your settings. Instead of 5, you know, you can put 5 million. Click that lever down and see how long it takes. So now that we have this, the animation's looking really good. Let's go back to our code.js file and review our written ideas. Okay, let's go back over there, code.js file. Okay. So let's see, we have a lever is depressed and the toggle function is invoked. Yes, check, we did that. We set the timer based on the value of the intensity setting. Yes, check, this is number 2 right there. Turn on the heaters, check. Set heater, 0, boom, turned them on. Oh, I'm sorry, that's off. This is on, turned them on. Timer runs out, check. This will eventually run out by itself, don't have to do anything. Turn heaters off, check, yes, we do that, yep. Reset the lever, yep, we did, we reset, ready for the next toaster, and then cancel any timers. Now, we didn't cancel the timer, but eventually we're going to set the timer and cancel the timer. So the set timeout, let's make sure that I didn't do that in there. We're going to do that in a little bit, but I just wanted to go over that one step there. So let's see. Let's clean it up and also review the timer const. So let's just look around real quick. Everything's looking pretty good. I don't have a bunch of wasted space here. And you know what? Let's get rid of this console log for now. So that doesn't need to be there. 1 line is fine between these things. That's looking good. And let's see. We can get rid of these comments because we don't need them either. So they've served their purpose. Let's get rid of that space. There we go. I got a nice clean function here. And I'm just going to save real quick while we're at it. Now, when we invoke a set timeout function, we get the invoked instance, which is assigned to our timer constant. So what that's saying right here is this set timeout, this function right here that JavaScript gives us, returns something, and it will return into whatever we assign it to. So in this case, it's going to be in the timer, which is what we called it. We could have called it butter, could have called it anything we wanted to, but we try to label things so we know what they are when we use them. So if a user keeps clicking the toaster lever, the toggle function will keep making a new set timeout. So if it's set for 5 minutes and you click it again, 5 minutes and you click it again, all of a sudden there's going to be like popcorn. There's just going to be a bunch of them stopping at whenever they're supposed to stop and turn back on again. So it'll get crazy out there. So if they keep clicking the toaster that way, it's not going to work. So if a user could click the toaster fast enough, there would be like a buildup of the function calls that would crash the browser. So it's a good idea to cancel a set timeout when it's no longer needed. So to do this, we just call another function called cancel timeout, which accepts the set timeout as the first argument. So once again, cancel timeout is a function that's available to us in JavaScript. And all we have to do is we're going to actually, we know this function is run at the end of this time. So anything inside of these curly braces is going to run after the timer is up. So that's the best place to put the cancel. So we'll go right here and actually it's called clear timeout, not cancel timeout. And all we have to do is pass in the timer. It's the same instance. It already knows about it. So the clear timeout's going to run and it's going to clear it for us. So let's save our work and refresh the browser. So we'll go back over here, refresh the browser, and what do we got here? We got our toaster. Our console logs are gone. If you didn't do that already, please get rid of your console logs. You don't need those now to get in the way. And let's just try our first second. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. All right, and that's enough for us. Let's just go to 5. Well, nice work, everyone. Now we've created a good looking toaster. Wouldn't it be nice to see an actual piece of bread toast over time? So in the next video, we'll add a way to see what a piece of toast would look like when it's toasted. Now, if you enjoyed this video, click like and then subscribe buttons to get notifications of new content. I appreciate you. Thank you for exploring programming with me, and I'll see you in the next video.